Kristy Putten, Senior Director, Directorate Data Officer from ACT Government. And Kristy has over 17 years working for government. Kristy has a small team. I want to clarify what small means.
2.
Okay, small. The reason I'm asking, I was always saying I'm from a small town to my kids, and one day they asked, how small is your town? And I said 900,000 people. And I said, it's not small, Mama. So Kristy leads a small team of 2 people who are data experts that have been charged to implement Environment Planning and Sustainable Development Directorate data strategy for 2025. And Kristy also has co-authored the Joint Directorate GIS strategy for 23-26. So GIS there as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristy.
All right. Thank you for listening. My mission, I guess I wanted to start off with who I am. So my mission is to facilitate data-driven decisions. Specifically now that I'm in EPSDD and have been for 10 years, that we are able to shape Canberra's future, specifically sustainable planning and protecting our natural environment. But prior to that, I worked for Australian Government, Geoscience Australia and AusAid, and I was overseas for 5 years working with disaster managers and informing them to get science into their disaster management plans. So I've always kind of had that background of getting that data into decision-making hands, whatever it is, spatial or non-spatial. Now I have to figure out how to click this button. Cool. So what I'm going to present on is the why, how, who and what. So why is data governance so important? How can a data strategy help me? Who is responsible? And what have we done as ACT Government, specifically Environment Planning and Sustainable Development, done to accomplish this over the last couple of years? So just to give a bit of a background of ACT Government, we are 9 directorates. We have Environment Planning and Sustainable Development, I put, of course, in the direct centre. Obviously, that's not the true. We've got 2 health directorates, so ACT Health and Canberra Health Services. We've got our Chief Minister's Treasury and Economic Development Directorate, who also has all our digital and data capability in there, as well as our Community Services, Education. And the reason that there's different boxes down below, Transport Canberra and City Services is our main partner when we do all our data and GIS stuff together, Geographical Information Systems, for those that are playing along. And then Justice and Community Safety and Major Project Canberra are ones that are actually coming in and utilising a bit more. Of course, Emergency Services specifically have to do a lot of work with our data, but they have to have it in their own operational system so they can back it up. So we try and do as much partnership, but they don't actually sit in our systems. So, the benefit of data governance. Now, we've all heard it, but it's nice to kind of frame it here as a why. Why are we doing this? And I think that's what we've heard for the last day, and I'm sure we'll hear it tomorrow as well, is why do we need a data governance? Why do we need a data strategy? What is it that's going to help us? So I kind of thought I'll just frame it in a nice picture of we want to be able to predictively analyse our data and plan effectively. We want to enhance and resource our allocations. We want to shape our policies and our strategies. We want to identify any inefficiencies, and we want to enhance our communication. Then our barriers here and our challenges that we need to kind of turn into opportunities. We've got lack of data quality and availability. We've heard it all before. Data privacy, been talking about that as well. Lack of analytics expertise, our skill sets. We need to expand that across everywhere. Limit integration, interoperability. Our systems, I think they're getting a lot better, but previously they have been all very siloed. How do we kind of bring those together and talk better together? As well as our resistance to change as organisations. So how do we kind of increase our benefits and decrease our barriers? So the 5 things we called out environment planning specifically to enable this change is we need to see strong, visible executive engagement. We need to have proficient data governance groups, which I'll talk about further. Skilled support and easy to follow guidelines, which we're working on. able to discover, access our fit-for-purpose data sets, and of course, ultimately, bringing that self-service and allowing everyone to access their own data at their own leisure. And of course, that brings tech. So one thing that also is an enabler is dollars. Now, I don't have that. So we have to do with what we've got, and that's kind of what I'm going to show you today as my case study. So where are we sitting? So in 2020, we had the Data Governance and Management Policy Framework come out for whole of ACT government. We have all these beautiful strategies underneath, the ACT housing strategy, the digital strategy, our Directorate strategic plan, health services. There's a lot of them. We've got a district strategy. But ultimately, all of these strategies are, for a particular purpose. We want to make sure that our data is underlying all of those, and we've got great decision making and great KPIs and measurable success. So what we've also done, as to my little bio, is we've built the data strategy for the next 3 years, or we're halfway through that now, as well as a GIS strategy, which came out. We launched it on GS Day last year to start this year. So we each have, from an ACT government perspective, each of our directorates have our own data strategy, but with our GIS strategy, there is a lot of collaboration going on. So we've made sure this is across 2 directorates, but we've opened it up to any directorate who wants to kind of jump on. It was just easier writing it for 2 directorates and saying, hey, whole of gov, here's your strategy, which someone would knock back, of course, so we could do it as 2 directorates. So where we went from here. So just the fact that I've written 2 strategies in the last couple of years, my big take-homes were trying to get it on a page. So being able to kind of have your PowerPoints ready to go. And so the data strategy is not like this, but the GIS strategy is slide-based. So it means that rather than having an abundance amount of words, that you're able to kind of bring up the slides specifically to what you want to talk about. But where we're heading with our data strategy, we're committed to shaping Canberra's future through informed data-driven decisions. Nice, brilliant vision up top. We're using, of course, the ACT Data Management Governance Framework principles, which are sitting in there, so we didn't make those up. And then what are we actually doing for the 3 years? So we've got some principles ourselves, which I do believe will change for our next strategy, but this is our first strategy that we've kind of put together. So we've talked a lot about data culture today, and I'm sure we will again, but we've got a good stream on that. How do we kind of incorporate that? How do we start looking at our data governance and understanding what we need to do there? How do we make our data discoverable? How do we share consistently and reuse our data, as well as, of course, make it reliable, ethical, safe and secure? And then we've kind of put some goals inside that and our working capability. So in a similar fashion, I've done the GIS strategy to kind of look at the similar thing, but of course, GIS is across data and technology, as well as people and processes and skill sets. So it's kind of a little bit different, but looking at that same focus and same format. Again, having that beautiful vision up the top to empower, to think and work spatially. And then our principles and our GIS pillars of governance in there, sustainable pillars of governance, I think we called it, across there. So we're looking at our governance again, our data and our databases, our procedures, our workflows, our software, our infrastructure, and the value realisation, so our skill sets. How do we kind of invest in our people and our applications? So, lastly on our how aspect, so I had 2 strategies, but how am I doing this? Or we're doing this together. So we've got the data team, and currently I've got 2 staff, so a data process and collaboration and a data insights and outreach. Specifically, I made sure that those positions were had that collaborative and outreach names in it. So it's all about, as Kate was just saying, making sure that you are building that culture. So it's not about just this team doing the work. It's about the people, actually, my staff, going out, and me, going out and talking to everyone and their dog about what's going on and how to do that. So one of my staff members in the room at the moment, he goes out and does as many Power BI dashboards and analytics and kind of gets them on that trail, the same way Kate does it for 180. I don't know how you do that, but 170 something, was it? 77 nearly. We don't have that many divisions. Our divisions are 6, but we go out there and work on as many things as we can to kind of bolster that up. I am, the green bit is I am hiring a GIS governance person for 3 months, so I just found a little bit of money there. But I guess the slide also says we've got an abundance of those spokes. So that hub and spoke model that people have been talking about, we've got a lot of spokes, and a lot of those guys are in the room as well, about making sure that they're involved and we're learning from them. So not only are we doing our own work, but we enable them to bring their work and we actually push that out to whole of government. Jen's in the room at the moment, the Maps and Data team put together a spatial data metadata guidelines, and we push that up the train. So if we didn't have this governance structure 2 years ago, that would have been a bit of hell. But we're able to kind of go, yep, we've got a document, we want to push it all the way up, it becomes a whole of government document just by a small team in EPSDD putting that together. We've also got the data analytics team, which is that overarching one that sits within the Chief Minister's area. And on the right-hand side is we actually work in DevOps. So this is, again, a how aspect. We have all of our initiatives tracked and we then be able to report on that. We've got a dashboard, beautiful dashboard showing us where we're up to. But that also enables that anyone can find out where we are going or where we're up to, and if we're even on track, because a couple of these are not, how do we get that going forward? All right, this is the one I love. Who's responsible? Everyone. So we've already talked about that in this, but it was a 3 a.m. thought bubble a couple of years ago where I have a 7 and a 3-year-old now, but at the time he was 5. He had one of these little games that he got in his party pack, and I went, that's really cool. How do I make that into a bit of a gamification aspect and kind of reiterate to everyone that this is about you. This is about you skilling up to get that ball, that piece of data, all the way out to data-driven decisions, and how we as a team and the foundation of our data strategy can help that. So the key is our team helping as much as we can, and the principles of our strategy going forward, but you need to upskill yourself and bring that data set up to those levels. So that's where we're kind of go from there is our pretty little picture. It's probably got more words than it should have now, but that's an idea that came up a year or 2 ago. And you will see, unfortunately, there is a full barrier and you can't get out in the catalogue and management area at the moment, but it used to, it was there. I did take that line out and then I realised it's back in, so there you go. What does that say? Okay, so here we are. We're also looking at our roles and responsibilities from how we actually manage our data. Now, the middle section is from our data governance and management framework, the whole of government one. I have introduced the data manager, that's why it looks a little bit off the page. Because where we started was that we decided that data custodian should be that executive group manager, or for you guys, SES level band 2, and then we work our way down from that. So our data steward then becomes an EL2 aspect, but then we need that data manager to really make sure that they're responsible for the data quality. And then out to having business owners and system owners and our executive data lead going there. But the intent here is, I guess, to kind of call it out, who's responsible for what and where that's going. The next slide is not 100%, it was an image, but this is where we want to be. We want to have all of our activities on the side and then tell you what you're responsible for. So who's accountable, who's responsible, who do we need to consult in each of those steps, and who do we need to inform? So our intent is every time we say we're going to do a process, we start putting those in. So we're looking at data sharing and public data release at the moment. We also want to do procurement of data. So when you buy that data or when that data comes in from a data agreement, what is your responsibility? But again, very simple Power BI dashboard that, again, Adam put together with an Excel background, but it gives you that starting point of that next step. And of course, we could do this for anything, even so with our geospatial ecosystem, which I'm about to talk about in a sec, is is being able to just put that on a systems aspect. So who's responsible for a disaster reduction, and actually have it in a slide deck like this, or a dashboard that we can check out. So what are we doing, I guess, is where we're up to. So we've got a nice governance structure now. This one is focused from the GIS side of things, being in the centre, mainly because it came from the GIS strategy. It was a nice, pretty picture. But what we've got here is kind of looking at that underlying what our influences. So from a GIS perspective, we've got industry bodies, we've got Standards Australia, we've got national specifications, we've got our Commonwealth and states of jurisdictional gatherings, the Australian, New Zealand, Spatial Council, ICSM is the Intergovernmental Committee for Surveying and Mapping. But we've got that underlying influence. We then have our community practices that we've talked about, that Kate talked about as well, and we do ours in teams, but we have that communities of practice. We do get together once in a while to do some great presentations. But then we've got that operational working group. So we've got our technical advisory groups for our geospatial area, and specifically for the different technologies that we have in it. But then we've also got our data governance and management working group that's got a plan of attack of where we want to be. Then we've got our executives and how that then reports up. And so for us, in ACT government, our whole of government governance is data management group, which is at my level, and the data reform group, which is at that EGM or band 2 level, to kind of then pull that up. And we've all kind of agreed on this kind of hierarchy and how we get to that strategic board, which is our DG level across the board there. So it's a great kind of governance, and we've got a really good process now involved. And as we evolve the geospatial ecosystem, we will have more and more contributors come in. But at the moment, that left-hand side is what we do as our directorate. The middle is how we're joining forces with the geospatial as well as the whole government, and the other side's TCS because it was in the strategy. Okay, so what are we doing in the geospatial space, and how are we making this happen here? I guess in the past we've always had this issue of our data being scattered. They're on hard drives, they're on network drives, they are on Oracle databases, which was lovely. They're in managed databases. But how do we kind of all get that together? And so a couple of years ago, in a joint program with Transport Canberra and City Services, we built the geospatial ecosystem, which is basically an Esri enterprise system, for those that know Esri. But the intent there is to kind of bring everyone together, and we're still on that journey of governance, of how we're moving our data through it, how we use our users through it, how do we make sure things are sensitive, that get locked down but still accessible. As Samuel was talking about, being able to see it, so you know it's there, but not necessarily access it. So we have a lot of kind of work to do in that space of how to figure out that governance supply. But that is one example of what we're trying to do, is bringing people together. Another examples, and these are all simple ones. The first one wasn't simple. These ones are a little bit more simpler, is just having some Power BI dashboards for the information we know at hand. So right now we've just got this front landing page. Again, we kind of stepped away from a website. We've decided to use Power BI. We've got more control. We can change it as soon as we want to with the underlying data. And we just started building things in. So I'll talk about the data audit, but we've got our documentation. We've got a data glossary, so every time we come across a term, we pop it in. And then we've got some access to different websites to kind of go find your data openly. Oh, and I guess as well, Adam's starting the outreach channels as well, as part of that data literacy, data personas, kind of understanding that data training aspect. So this is our data audit, which is turning into our data catalogue. But the intent was to kind of showcase who has what and who doesn't have what and who doesn't really know what they have capability. So we were able to get over 1,300 data sets put into this, with environment, heritage and water being ultimately the biggest chunk of data coming through. But the intent here was not to really gather the metadata per se, it was just to gather a bit of a high level understanding of the data set. So does it have personal information? what type of format is it, which I think I was trying to prove the point that we've got 685 spatial data sets. So proving the point that spatially is a big thing in environment planning. Who maintains it, how is it financed, that kind of aspect that you may not necessarily ask in a metadata, but we kind of need to do from a business perspective. We also kind of then put a data governance documentation landscape together. So what are all these documents that are going around, and how do we kind of just bring them together in a fashion that we can find easily? And you can see that colour coding. We've got ACT Government, we've got it from our Digital and Data Technology Services, EPSDD, federal documentation and legislation in there. And then that also shows us the gaps. What is it that we actually want to then write up? What is it that we don't have that we can put together? Now, lastly, this is actually me coming to the end, so I don't know if that's good on timing or not, but I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a plug for the next steps for us. And so I fully believe from ACT perspective that our next step is digital twin. So we're able to kind of bring that master data management plan together into one system where we see everything for a particular challenge. So where this one's at, I'm just going to get to the end here. So what the intent here is that we actually are able to bring spatial, non-spatial, Internet of Things, anything we can into one location with a common platform of spatial, that then you can see what's going on and what decisions you can make. So the examples that we have here is land supply. So what land do I have left to build on? What land, what brown space or what apartments or houses can be knocked down and rebuilt? What do we have available to us, given that we have to make sure that we're in consideration of our environmental offsets, of our heritage data, of our any other data that's going to impact us. Our canopy cover is a big aspect here for us as well in ACT. So where are we going with that? We want to electrify everything in ACT. We've got a net zero plan of 2045. So how do we make sure that all our ACT assets, like our barbecues and our facilities, can move on to electricity? What does that impact on the network? So trying to figure out those big challenges within this kind of system. There's also a health question here as well. We have a lot of data around health now with our MyDHR application that kind of follows us around the hospital or around with our results. What can we do to marry up services to our community? So if I need I think that a new location like Molonglo will be maybe a baby city. What does that mean? Well, Nappyville. What does that mean in 10 years' time? What do I need to put? What services need to put in there compared to now? Gungahlin was our Nappyville, but now it's kind of teenagers. What do we should be putting in there? So kind of marrying up with what access we have going forward. So I'm going to leave you, and I'll have questions, but with a little video just to kind of wake you up before afternoon tea. And it might be loud, so, we'll see. No, it's not loud.
Thank you, Kristy. It was quite an ending, isn't it, with the video? That will be hard to beat. All right, we probably have one or two questions. Jen is here to help. Do we have questions?
Morning to you.
We have a question.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Marrying up the GIS data with other systems, it's challenging.
Yep.
Governance on GIS is very good. But most of the Power BI dashboards which you guys are doing, where are all the transformations are happening? Is it in Power BI or somewhere else?
Yeah, all right. I will answer and then see if Adam wants to answer it for me. But yeah, basically we are doing it, we're pulling it in. We want to make sure when we're pulling the data, it's either from our records management system, so if it's an Excel document that we're pulling from there, or a SharePoint page. So we literally have the location that it's pulling from, and then doing the manipulation, if required, within the back end of the Power BI dashboard.
So it's everything resides in Power BI?
Yep. We try and do as much as we can in Power BI, but leave the source where it is, and of course update nightly if we can, or is required.
Yeah, you mentioned something on sensitivity, like within the governance. How are we going to classify the data when we aggregate the data?
Yeah, so the classification aspect. So we are just following the government classification sensitivity of unofficial, official, sensitive. So we try and classify the data that way, and then enable it to go from there. So we have roughly about those 1,300 data sets. I think we came up with like 150 that are sensitive, and so the intent there is to start working with those, but honestly we haven't actually started too much with our sensitive information. We've kind of left it source for now and taken the easy route with the non-sensitive.
Yeah.